fluent and chill. I'm fluent. He's chill. What's up, Jay? How you doing, man?
Hey, man. Basketball season is going on. We got the playoffs coming up really soon. We got some interesting stuff going on, Tone. We got some real interesting stuff going on today, man.
So many stories in this world, and we're trying to keep it about sports, and we will. We got a very interesting mail drop because I think I know something you don't know, and it'll be the first time ever. So I'm really excited about this.
I don't know about
I'm
that.
really excited about it.
I don't know.
We're gonna play a game of NBA versus.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna give you a player from the past, a player from today, versus. We're gonna see how they match up. Conspiracy. I've always been on the 5+ believing these conspiracies. You know I'm gonna be on the other side of this one. So you know it has to do with the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
But first, yesterday during our live, we do lives every Monday night, 8 p.m. on TikTok.
Yeah.
We talked about Calvin Ridley. I tried to defend Calvin Ridley. You were very much, hey, he did something wrong. If I may take a moment, may I go through the series of events and then we'll see if that changes your opinion or if your opinion is the same?
I'm all ears, Tone.
All right, here we go. So the end of NFL suspended, we all know. Calvin Ridley of the Falcons, the wide receiver of the Falcons, for the entire 2022 season.
Mm-hmm.
If I may, I have to look something up. I do apologize because I want to make sure that I'm accurate on this.
Mm-hmm.
If I may. So he has lost so he loses the whole season. I believe it's like $11 million. $11 million. Let me just go through a list of some suspensions.
Mm-hmm.
Ray Rice beating his fiance, 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
Adrian Peterson, felony child abuse, 6 games.
Mm-hmm.
Greg Hardy beating his girlfriend, 10 games, reduced to 4.
Mm-hmm.
Ezekiel Elliott hitting a woman, 6 games.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Gordon. Oh, okay, that's 6 seasons for smoking weed, but that's a repeat offender. Calvin Ridley, 17 games for using FanDuel. Mm-hmm. I know that's a joke, but for gambling, I know it's illegal. So I'm putting that out there to be like, is the penalty, does it fit the crime?
Right.
All right, so here's a series of events. So in November, Ridley placed 3 bets: a 3-team, a 5-team, and an 8-team parlay.
Mm-hmm.
He placed the bets via a mobile app in Florida, where online sports gambling is legal or was legal at the time.
Mm-hmm.
The bets, I talked to a betting aficionado. I have a couple on speed dial.
He knows them.
Said those are pretty bad bets. The likelihood of winning a 3, 5, and 8-team parlay is like a scratch ticket. Like the odds aren't very good, especially on the 8-team parlay. So it was a bad bet to begin with, but still he made a bet.
Uh-huh.
He did bet on the Falcons to win in each one of those 3, 5, and 8-team parlays. The bets totaled $1,500.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming 5, 5, and 5, but I don't know that for a fact. The league determined he used no insider information for these bets, and no one with the team was aware of these bets.
Mm-hmm.
The league has confirmed this. It's still, listen, I get it. Betting is a no-no. They were bad bets to begin with. Sports betting is being legalized all over North America right now. In fact, I'm pretty sure the NFL is like brought to you by DraftKings or FanDuel. That right? Like it's something that's going to be now. I get what you're going to say, which is, listen, you can't do it. But let me stop. Let me not make my case. There's a series of events. Uh-huh. There's the punishment for that crime. Mm-hmm. Now tell me your thoughts. Have they changed at all?
No. And the reason why they haven't changed is, number one, we've actually had a history of this, not from Calvin Ridley, but from the league. I don't know if you know this, Tone, but the Hall of Famer, I believe his name is Paul Horing, from the Green Bay Packers. He was suspended for the 1963 season for gambling. The entire season, he was suspended.
Was gambling legal then?
No. He was suspended for the entire season, I believe.
So he did something that was illegal that he would have gone to jail for outside of playing.
It was gambling. I'm 100% confident. I'm 100% confident that in the CBA agreement, gambling is involved in that, and that is a no-no. I am sure of that. I don't know what the 416-page policy looks like, but I am 100% confident that gambling is a part of that you cannot do. However, all right, when you talk about Adrian Peterson, when you talk about Ray Rice, when you talk about the guys that you talked about, none of those guys, what they did possibly could determine the outcome of a football game. None of them. Ray Rice, what he did, that was after the season was over. Ezekiel Elliott, that was after the season was over. We haven't even started the season. So none of these things possibly do that. When you're talking about gambling, we're talking about the integrity of the game. I cannot sell a product. I cannot endorse a product and sell it if I can't guarantee its authenticity. So if I got people out here betting on games, right? If I got people out here betting on games, what I'm doing is I'm compromising the integrity of not just that person, but the game. Because now what I'm doing is I'm opening up Pandora's box. Well, who else is doing this? Not only who else is doing this, who else is involved in this? How deep does it go? Are they only betting on games that they play in? Are they betting on games with other teams? Are they in partnership with other players and things of that nature? Well, I can't have that because that's going to destroy the integrity of the game. Ridley doesn't think this is a big deal. Well, Roger Goodell does. And since you don't think this is a big deal, we're going to shut the door on this to make sure you know how big a deal this is. I personally think that this is grounds for expulsion, because I said this to you before, Tone. I cannot work at the bank and just take $50 and go, it was only $50, I'll put it back. Now I can appreciate your logic. Well, it wasn't illegal. Actually, it's the integrity of the sport. Because if I can't trust you, Tone, then we can't run this thing. If I can't trust you, then we can't do it.
I understand. I don't disagree. I think when I compare it to the things that those others did, my moral compass says those were worse. My moral compass says those were worse. Beating on women, beating your wives, doing those things are worse. And
that's what I can get. Yeah.
So my moral compass says, like, how does one guy get 17 games for $1,500 of gambling? I get the integrity of the game. I understand what you're saying. So I'll leave it up to everyone who's listening to give us their comments. Let us know, what do you think about Calvin Ridley? Was the penalty too harsh? Was it too soft? Should he be out forever? Because Pete Rose bet on his own team. Granted, he did a lot more. He's out of baseball forever. They're keeping one of the best players ever out of the Hall of Fame. So was it too harsh? Speaking of putting it in the comments, you can hear us on a lot more places. May I run down the list?
I'm all ears, Tone. Where we at?
For those of you that like listening to podcasts, I always say, I get it. You might just not want to stare at us staring at each other for an hour. So check it out. We are now available on Apple Podcast, Castbox, Google Podcast, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Stitcher, and Amazon Music. I don't know that there's anywhere else that plays podcasts. If you can think of one, let me know, because I think we're on every single one. So that's available right now. Every back episode and moving forward is now available on all of those platforms. Obviously, just look up Fluent and Chill.
If you're looking for us, we ain't hard to find.
Now, if you do enjoy watching us, because I'm going to post this on other places, because you're here right now. You're at Chilltown Hoops, and you're watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to give us a follow and the like button and all those wonderful things, and send your comments, because we do use the comments in Mail Drop. That being said, it's now time for Conspiracy. Dun, 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 as my daughter would say. Dun, dun, dun. So this was, I told you we sent out an ask to the listeners and viewers, and we said, hey, tell us what you got. In 2002, the Western Conference Finals, NBA. The NBA, here's the theory. Here's the basic theory of the conspiracy. The NBA influenced referees to make sure that the Los Angeles Lakers had an opportunity to beat the Sacramento Kings. Before I go into any of the details, what do you know about this, and what are your initial thoughts?
Well, one of the things I know for a fact is that Bennett Salvatore, who was one of the officials, before he was an official in the NBA, he was an undercover cop. So, with being an undercover cop, you can imagine exactly what the logic would be there. So, I do have to play a part. That does matter. Now, was it fixed? I don't think it was fixed, but I just figured I'd throw that out there. Before Bennett Salvatore was a professional basketball official, he did work as an undercover police officer. So, an undercover police officers, what their job primarily is to what?
Go undercover and did well, it's to uncover the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Depends. I guess it depends on how you look at it.
And in the process of uncovering the truth, what are they doing?
Yeah, you have to go along with some shady business.
Yes, you do. So I just want to put that out there. That's number one. Number two, I'm very confident that I heard Vlade Divac say, quote, if we have home court advantage, we're going to beat the Lakers. He said that. So when I look at what the Lakers did in this series, and when I look at what the Lakers did in that game, particularly,
specifically Game 6, right?
Specifically Game 6, it does raise some eyebrows, Tone. Yes, it does.
Okay.
It does raise some eyebrows.
So the Kings maintain to this day, right? Like if you talk, you know, I don't. I'm trying to remember who's on that team. Was it like Mike Bibby, Doug Christie, Chris Webber, Vlade? I'm sure I'm missing some other guys, but
Lawrence Funderburk, Bobby Jackson, Gerald Wallace.
That's a good. That's a nice squad. That was a nice squad. So here's the problem. They maintain to this day that there was something fishy about that game. We know that. The other problem is Tim Donaghy, who was convicted, that NBA referee who was convicted of fixing games, or I don't want to say fixing, influencing games. Obviously came out and said
he was fixing games, Tone. Call it what it is.
Came right out and said that game was fixed.
Mm-hmm.
The other, listen, they want the big market Los Angeles Lakers, Kobe, Shaq. Of course, they want that over Sacramento, right? However, I will say this. The NBA did say, hey, we want big market teams. We would love for LA to move forward. That doesn't mean, right? We want the Lakers. We want the Celtics. We want the Knicks. We want the Bulls. We want those teams to be successful. That doesn't mean we're going to do anything to make sure that they're successful. But of course you want, listen, I always tell everybody, you come to your own conclusion, right? But how does the NBA get paid the majority of their money?
Well, a lot of it is TV and ticket sales.
TV revenue, if you have, right. TV revenue is number one. If people think it's ticket sales, it's not. There are teams that don't even have to sell a ticket and they're good. It's now, if you do have to sell a ticket, that means yours probably we got a different issue. But that being said, the biggest chunk is TV revenue. That's why they get these big long-term TV revenue deals. Well, when you look at games that get the most viewership, which will get a bigger TV deal, it's when you have LeBron playing, Jordan playing, Bird playing, Magic playing, right? Bird and Magic, that whole rivalry saved the NBA probably from bankruptcy. When you look at teams now, Lakers, just think about it, and I'm not knocking these teams, but if you had a Minnesota-Orlando final, I know that's crazy to say, but if you had a Minnesota-Orlando final versus a LeBron James Laker versus a Kevin Durant Nets final, which one's going to get more views?
Well, it's simple. That's really simple, Tone. People talk all the time about the underdog. You don't like the underdog. You say that you like the underdog, but you don't like the underdog. How do I know that? Because I watched in the 2007 World Series the Tampa Bay Rays play against the Philadelphia Phillies. Just so you know, Tampa, they didn't sell out. They're in the World Series and they didn't sell out.
They didn't sell out.
That's number one. Number two, when we talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers playing against the San Antonio Spurs in 2007 in the NBA Finals, just so you know, it was the lowest rating in NBA history. That's number two. I mean, I could go on and on. However, with all of that being said, Tone, rewind the clock back to the 18-19 season when James got hurt with the Lakers. When James got hurt with the Lakers and he didn't make the playoffs, is it a coincidence that viewership dropped in the playoffs 52%? That's not a coincidence. You care about big markets. You care about big names. You care a big deal about these things. Tone, let's be quite honest. You don't care about Minnesota and Oklahoma City in the Western Conference Finals. You don't. You can say you do, but you do not care about Oklahoma City
I'd watch it. I'd still watch it.
You might watch a little bit. You don't care about Oklahoma City.
No, you're right.
But I
you're
tell
right.
you what you do care about. You care about the Warriors and the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. I bet you'll watch that. Absolutely, you do. So the logic of the underdog, you don't care about that. No, you don't. You don't care.
People like to say the Cinderella story, and
you don't
like with the NCAA tournament, which we're going to talk about next week. The NCAA tournament, the Cinderella story or the underdog. But when they see the Denver Nuggets, the 8 seed, upset the 1 seed, that hurts. That hurts the league and that hurts viewership because there's a reason that there's a team that's a 1 or a 2 seed. It's because they typically have the best players. And who do you want to see play? The best players. So
really quick to retract on, it wasn't 52%, it was 48%. I'm sorry that James was when James wasn't playing in the 18. Viewership was down
48%. Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right. Well, like we do like all these conspiracies. You watched it. I watched it. 1 out of 10. Do you feel that this was influenced? I'm not even going to say fixed. I'm going to say influenced to help the Lakers.
Well, let me give you some logic, Tone. In the fourth quarter of that game, the Lakers shot 27 free throws for the game. In the fourth quarter, they shot 27 free throws. Sacramento shot 25 free throws for the game. Mike Bibby is covering Kobe Bryant on an inbound. Kobe bows him in the face to get open. Clearly bows him in the face to get open. Gets the ball, and Mike Bibby is called for the foul. It's stuff like that, right? It's stuff like that that makes me raise my eyebrow going, wow. I mean, I know that the Lakers weren't the only team. I know that Sacramento wasn't the only team that was fouling, right? But when I think about what was going on throughout the course of that game, you could make the argument that it was a conspiracy and that they were trying to get the Lakers to Game 7. You absolutely could make that argument. 27 free throws just in the fourth quarter alone to 25 free throws for Sacramento for the game. That's incredible.
It is incredible, but it's not unheard of. And why I say that is, how many games can we go back and say, wow, look at the disparity, the disparity between free throws of one team and another, right? I'm immediately reminded during the LeBronto days where LeBron would have more free throws than the entire Raptor team in the playoffs. Is that a conspiracy or is it just style of play? Is it superstars get calls? When you look at those two teams, and this is no disrespect to Chris Webber and Doug Christie and all those guys, but compare Doug Christie and Chris Webber to Shaq and Kobe. Who's getting superstar? Now, I don't agree with this, but who's getting the superstar call? It's Shaq and Kobe every time, right?
But you also leaving out, Tone, that was an elimination game. If the Lakers lose that game, they're out. So this isn't a situation where this is Game 3 where we lose. No, and this also isn't a situation where this was going on the entire series because it wasn't going on the entire series. It was glaring in that game particularly, where you're talking about a team we shot just in one quarter the amount of free throws that you shot in the game. So when I think about James shooting more free throws than Toronto in the game, I don't think it was in an elimination game. I don't think the stakes were that much high. I don't think the stakes were
still the playoffs. It was
the playoffs, absolutely. But it just looks so much. It makes me raise my eyebrow when I think about, wow, in the fourth quarter of an elimination game, can we not let this happen?
Yeah, but I'll say this: is it? And I'll get your number out of 10 here in a second. Is it just human nature? Like they're refs, they're influenced by the moment. They're influenced by I know they're not supposed to be, but they are. Or is it, hey, before the game we said, hey, let's make sure these guys have a chance to win?
One of the most
because that's a big leap.
That's not the same thing. In fact, it's way different. One of the most important things as a referee is being told to call what you see. If I saw this foul in the first quarter, that's the same foul in the fourth quarter. Let's make sure that we 100% call what you see.
You know that's not true.
I do know that that's not true. And specifically in that game, it wasn't true. So when I think about that, Tone, I can honestly say a 7, maybe even an 8 on a scale from 1 to 10. When I look at the foul disparity, when I look at what those guys did. But on the flip side to that, Tone, there was a Game 7. There was a Game 7. And in the process of there being a Game 7, this is why I have such a difficult time with there being a conspiracy throughout the series. Now, that game, I can get with that logic, absolutely. But in terms of the series, one, we had a game 7. And we had, not only did we have a game 7, Kobe Bryant in that game 7, he goes 30-10. Doug Christie had 11 points. Shaq went 35-13 in that game. Vlade Divac played 27 minutes, had 15 points. All right. Chris Webber, he had 20, I think he had 22. Just so you know, Tone, he scored 5 points in the second half, including the overtime. You had you had one game to win on your home floor, and you didn't get it done. So that's what makes me go the other way when it comes to a conspiracy theory for the series. For that one game, we could definitely have that conversation, and it's a legit argument. But for the series, it was a game 7. And
I'm glad you brought that up, because it reminds me of I believe it was 15-16 when the Warriors went 73-9.
Yes, sir.
And everybody wants to bring up, well, Draymond Green was suspended for that game, and that's why they lost. Well, there was a game 7 in Golden State, was there not?
That was a game 7.
How'd that go?
It didn't go, Tone.
So my point is this. So you said, what did you say? 8, 9? Say 8, 9?
No, I'm giving it a 7.
A 7? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with a 4. 1, because you know why. 2, because I don't think it was the whole series. But I do think that maybe unintentionally the refs were, this is a great series. It would be great if it went 7 games. And maybe kind of they took that as let's see what we could do. But I don't think David Stern or a representative of his went to the refs and said, "Hey, make sure this game goes the Lakers' way." I don't, because if that's true, then we need to rethink every single game that's ever been played.
That's what I'm talking about.
Every single one from Super Bowl 1 or 2 when the Jets had no business winning that game
against Indianapolis. No,
and they won. So
this is what I'm talking about, Tone. This right here is exactly what you opening up Pandora's box now, and we don't want to do that. Not to mention, we just mentioned Game 7. Is that correct, Tone? Did we not mention Game 4 when the Sacramento Kings had a 24-point lead and they spit it out? We can't leave that part out. That's important too.
You can always look at moments and question moments. But when you look at the full game, like what was it? The Saints, where there's that obvious missed pass interference call. And people cry, "Oh, conspiracy." No, it was one bad, huge mistake by a human being. But I don't think that game was fixed.
I don't think it was fixed neither, no. But that was the game. That call, that's the game, Tone. Game's over.
I understand that. But you can look back and say, well, in the first quarter, in the second quarter, had the teams done this.
Right.
Like when you put yourself in a position, I always say this. I know that it's easier said than done. Mm-hmm. However, if you put yourself in a position where one play at the last second is then that's going to happen. The ball bounces the wrong way. A ref makes a bad call. A player makes a dumb bonehead call. A player slips and falls. We've seen it all happen. I don't think it plays to a bigger conspiracy. So that's what I'm saying. 4.
That 24-point lead, Tone. Just so you know, they win that game. The Kings go up 3-1 in that series, and the series is probably over.
Series is probably over. Very few 3-1 comebacks. No 3-0 comebacks, by the way.
0.
Which is interesting in basketball. All right. NBA versus.
Uh-oh.
So I'm going to give you 2 players. I want to hear your take on kind of who's better, what they do better than the other, how would they work in each other's era. Okay. Mm-hmm. We're going to start with the big man. Wilt Chamberlain, the mythological from Mount Olympus, versus Nikola Jokic, the reigning MVP.
Well,
you start with maybe like a skills. Let's go skill wise, then kind of game wise.
Well, that's what I mean. So when we talk about skill set, and I don't even know why we even talking about this dude, because my co-host here, he doesn't even think that he exists. So this is a mythological creature here in terms of Wilt Chamberlain. We talk about the Greek. So this figure of my imagination, if he actually played today,
yes,
right, I am convinced that everything that these guys do, he would have been able to do, because he would have not enhanced it. He would have put those skills in his game.
Yeah, we're not doing time machine. He was born in 1990.
Right.
Or
And
2000. He was born in 2000.
right. And the way Wilt was, I'm convinced there is nothing that Wilt could not do. So if you told Wilt to grab the ball off the glass and go with it, Wilt would have put that in his game. If you had a 3-point line, because there wasn't a 3-point line in the 60s, but if you got a 3-point line during this time and the big man shoots the three, Wilt would have shot the long ball. And
so
he would have been.
So you believe a guy who couldn't shoot free throws have developed a 3-point shot?
Absolutely. I think he would have. And not only do I think he would have done that, his ability to pass the basketball, his ability to be dominant on a box, all of those things. I saw a really good breakdown of Wilt's numbers, and they basically had him from back when his 50 and 26 season. They broke that down to what that would equate to today. And if he played today, it would equate to 29, 13, and 4. Now, I don't know, Tone, but 29, 13, and 4, that's Joel Embiid. That's Joker. Now, how are we talking about those guys?
MVPs.
They're the best players in the game. So I'm 100% confident that Wilt would still be, if he played today, Wilt would be, if not the best player, he would be one of the 3 best players in the game from a skill set standpoint. Absolutely. Because I don't think
so. They took those numbers and kind of adjusted for pace and era.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay. From the numbers were adjusted for pace, for era, for
possessions, all that
possessions, and all of that. And it came down to 29, 13, and 4. And I'm thinking to myself, that's the best player in the game today. That's Giannis. That's Embiid. That's the best player in the game. So there's no reason, especially considering there's no reason for me to think that it wouldn't be any other way, especially considering how Wilt adapted. And in terms of his skill set, the athlete that he was, and how quickly he was able to pick things up. I mean, Wilt, the reason why he got on the track team, he walked up to the track coach. Hey, coach, I want to try out for the track team. Never did the high jump before, but I think I could jump over that. Let me see if I can do it. And not only does he do it, he breaks the record in the Big 8. So if we got this going on today where we got big men handling the basketball and shooting the long ball and being the playmakers that they are, Wilt absolutely gives me no idea that he wouldn't have changed his game. There's no reason for me to think that Wilt wouldn't have changed his game and done that. None.
I actually think his assist numbers actually would be better because that season that they used wasn't the season that he was passing, right? Like he showed that he could pass when forced to or asked to or made to feel a certain way about passing, right? He led the league in total assists. Like it's not like he couldn't pass. And I always tell people, like, you see him, he's shooting fadeaway jumpers. He's shooting mid-range shots back then. Heck, I don't think he's doing this in the game, but he's hitting back to back what would be a 3-point hook shot, and he's making them consistently. Now, I'm not suggesting he would do that in a game,
correct,
but when I look at like what you said, first of all, he played in an era that was 8 teams, 10 teams in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And people always say, well, there's only 8 teams. It's easy. No, 8 teams in the league on a roster of 10 to 12 means it's the best 80 to 100 basketball players playing. Whereas right now, I get it. There might be more skilled players, more athletic players, but now you got 450, 500 players. It's a little bit more diluted. You're not going up against Nate Thurman and Bill Russell every night. Right, for every night that you're going up against, Rudy Gobert and Bam, you're going up against, Precious Achua at the center. No, and there's no disrespect to Precious, but he's not a 7-footer. He can't handle a true big man.
Right.
And so that's the part that I say, I don't disrespect him for that. On top of that, who's more athletic? This is the one I love because there was players today are more athletic. Who's more athletic, Wilt Chamberlain or Nikola Jokic?
Chamberlain.
It's not even a question.
Not close. So
if Jokic can do it, why couldn't someone who's more athletic and prove that he has the skill set, why couldn't he do it?
Right.
I don't know about the 3-point shot. I'm with you to the mid-range. I don't know if he develops a 3 because he couldn't. Like when you look at guys like Shaq and those guys, typically guys who can't hit free throws, typically on average can't shoot the 3 either. I could be wrong. All right. So if you had to put them in that's Wilt. What about Jokic? What things does Jokic have? Obviously, there's one, but what does he have over Wilt? And how would he have played in the 60s?
I think that he would have done very much what Wilt was doing. He was a little slower. He was more of a lumberer, lumbering down the lane, but his ability to shoot the long ball. And he looked, to be honest with you, Joker looked like a bigger, more skilled version of Bob Pettit. That's kind of what he looked like to me. Now, most people don't know this, but Bob Pettit was 26-14, and he was arguably the best four-man in the game. So if Joker played back then with Joker's ability to rebound, Joker's ability to play make and get guys the basketball and get to the rim.
Now, do you think he would have had those skills if he was born in 1950? Or
I don't think
1945 or whatever? Or would he just have been a big post-up guy?
Well, the reason why he has those skills, Tone, is because he saw guys like Dirk. He saw guys like Kukoc. He saw guys like Detlef Schrempf and Sabonis. That's where he got those skills from. Now, if you rewind the clock back to 1960, well, I've never seen anybody like that. So I don't really have anything to go off of except the way the game is being played. Well, how is the game being played? I get on the box, you give me the ball, you cut, and I shoot a hook.
Drop set, baby hook.
That's it. Right. So I don't see anybody that's my size that's handling the basketball. I don't see anybody that's my size. Excuse me. I don't see anybody that's my size that's handling the basketball or shooting the basketball outside of Wilt. I don't see anybody that's my size that's doing those sort of things. So I think that he would have still been awesome during that time. But in terms of the skill set, I don't think it would. Are we taking Joker's skill set back to 1960 or no?
No, I'm saying if he was born back then. Now, okay. Well, and then you could take it back. You could do both.
Right. If he was born back then I think that he would still be awesome, just because of how strong he is, just because of his development. Like I said, he learned his game looks like it comes from guys like Dirk and Kukoc and Sabonis. So he would have seen big guys back in that era, Chamberlain, Russell, Bob Pettit, and he would have taken stuff. He would have taken things from their game and used that in order to enhance his game. But the Euro game is just enhanced so much, Tone. It's just gotten so much better.
I think back then they weren't really, not a lot of European players were brought over to play in the NBA.
Right.
All right. So that being said, here's the final two questions that I'm going to ask you. We're doing 3 of these, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to give you, and each one's going to end with this question. 1-on-1, who's winning? And if you have to pick, who you picking between the two?
I'm taking Chamberlain in a 1-on-1. I don't think Joker could stop him. Chamberlain was too strong. Chamberlain was just as skilled, I think, if not more. And he was a better athlete. I think, and Chamberlain was an elite defender. I watched him and studied him and watched his game tape of him going up against Jabbar and how much of a force he was defensively. I think Joker would have had a really difficult time with him offensively. I think that Chamberlain would have dominated him in that aspect. So I think I'm taking Chamberlain.
And if you're picking him too, if you're picking a team?
Yes, sir. If I'm picking a team, okay. I'm taking Chamberlain.
Yeah, listen, how do you not pick a mythological being? So yeah, I'm picking Chamberlain on both as well, with the 1-on-1 and as the player. And I will say this, I always have this debate with a lot of people when I say, when one of your best skills and one of the things that make you great is passing, that knocks you down in a 1-on-1 matchup.
It does.
Right? Like, because you have to be a different mindset, right? That's why I say guys like Kobe, Jordan, Wilt will be better 1-on-1 players than Magic, LeBron, Russell, right? And that's not taking away from their overall games, because they just do different things. If they have like Magic's great, but Magic has a very, very pass first mentality.
That's his game.
I know that he can score. Like, he proved that he could play center and score. He scored 40 in that game 42, 15 and 7. I think he went in game 6 as a center.
He had a triple double.
So you could do it, but that's not his game. So that's why I always give the edge there. All right. This one's a tougher one. This one is a tougher one. Dennis Rodman versus Draymond Green.
Well, this is when I go back, Tone. When I talk, somebody asked me a question a while ago about Chris Middleton and Klay Thompson. I don't think that there's a player that I've seen in my lifetime who was better at his role than Dennis Rodman. I don't think so. And I've seen a lot of great role players, but I haven't seen a guy who you can plug in and do more things than Dennis Rodman. Add that to the fact that people underrate how smart Dennis was. You mentioned this to me a while ago, Tone, about the triangle offense is very complex. The triangle offense is not an offense that you could just pick up. Dennis picked it up just like that. And not only did he pick it up just like that, he thrived in it. So when I look at a guy like Dennis Rodman, his IQ, how smart he was, how versatile he was, how great he was in his role, I don't think that there's a guy who can match that. Now, when you talk about Draymond, I don't know if Draymond's a better athlete than Dennis. I think Dennis is a better athlete than him. I think Draymond is a little bit more skilled offensively, and I think that's primarily due to the fact that Draymond played on a team like that, and that was his role. So his role was to shoot the long ball. I think that Dennis could have done that because Dennis scored in college. Dennis was a scorer in college. When he got to Detroit, his game changed to being the dirty work guy. But he could score in college. Absolutely. So with that being said, I think Draymond is a little bit more of I think he's a better scorer. I think he's a better facilitator and a better playmaker offensively. But overall, I would have to go with Dennis.
This would be so, I mean, let me say my take, and then we'll do the one-on-one and who you take. So it's interesting that you brought up the IQ because there's the stories, right? Like people see the crazy side of Dennis Rodman and they think of, the crazy hair and the outfits and, marrying himself and all that, the partying and that stuff. Dennis was super smart. And when Dennis became a Bull, there's stories about him like learning that triangle, like being up all night studying and learning it. He talks about the angles of rebounds. And I know based on how far away it is and the angle and the trajectory that I know if it's going to hit there, well, okay, it's going to come here. So I just go to that spot. And that's how I know to get the rebound. So defensively, I know people want to say, and heck, even Draymond has said, I'm the greatest defender of all time. No, you're not. I really believe. I even have him. I know this is maybe a hot take. I have Dennis Rodman even over Russell. I think Dennis Rodman is the greatest defensive player I've ever seen.
I got him at two.
Okay. He's also probably the greatest rebounder we've ever seen. And to your point, he did score. He did score in college. He came to the Pistons and they said, hey, we got Isaiah who scores 20 a game. We got Dumars that scores 20 a game. We got Bill Laimbeer who's clotheslining over here. This is what we need you to do. And he went, okay, I'll do that. I want to be part of this team. Because don't forget, it's not like he was a big school, high recruit kind of guy. He wasn't. He was just a guy that wanted to belong. And here's your role. And here's how you're going to belong. And he plays that role. He gets to the Bulls. He learns one of the most complicated offenses ever. And they say, hey, we don't need you to score. We don't need you. And the funny thing is, if you look at it career-wise, him and Draymond score around the same, like points per game. They're the same.
Right.
Draymond is clearly the better passer. Draymond is clearly the better ball handler. I don't know if Dennis was a good ball handler or not because you didn't see it. All you saw was get a rebound and dribble out from underneath the rim to pass it to someone. So, he's for that for sure. He's a better 3-point shooter. I don't know that. I don't even remember. I think seeing Dennis shoot maybe a 3-pointer in his career.
Shoot him when the shot clock is going down.
Yeah, that wasn't his thing.
Like
So I agree with you. I think Draymond does more. There's more offensive versatility. But I think to your point, what Dennis does in terms of rebounding, defense, agitation, right? That mind games, those things, I don't think there's anyone better. So here's the tough one. If they were to play a one-on-one game, who would win? Would they survive? Would they make it through the game? Would they kill each other?
Well, that's what I'm thinking, Dennis. And the reason why, because I think that he would get on Draymond's nerves so much that he would drive Draymond nuts. He would absolutely make Draymond go batty because how Dennis would just needle and pick and get into your head. And what that took away from was how great a defensive player Dennis was, right?
They saw all the antics. They didn't realize the work and the hustle and the effort.
Right. It took away from how great of a defensive player Dennis was. Now, if we're going to play a one-on-one, Tone, we're going to have to play the 5. We can't play the 12 because we'll be here until next week.
Yeah, it might take a year,
Yeah, we'll be here till next week. We got to play the 5. So, but I think that Dennis would just make Draymond so nuts that he would just take him completely out of his game. Completely out.
I'm actually going to pick Draymond. And the only reason I'm going to pick Draymond is because he'll hit a 3 or 2, because we're only playing a 5. And so that's how he's going to do it. Because if he tries to go inside on Dennis, forget it. Right. So he's just going to have to be like, check and just pop one. And he can do that. Whereas I know Dennis, I don't think can do that. So if I got to worry about Dennis actually trying to make a move, posting someone up, because Dennis will hit a mid-range occasionally. He'll get a dunk. I just don't think he can do it enough versus Draymond. So I'm actually going one-on-one Draymond. But who am I picking, or who are you picking if you're putting a team together?
Dennis.
All right. Me too. Let me ask you this. This is kind of a side note. I had a conversation with the guys of our friends from Players Choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and we're comparing the Warriors team, the 16-17 Warriors versus the 96 Bulls. And I said, look, as great as Kevin Durant is, I don't know, man. If I put Rodman, just attach him to his hip, I think he gets in Kevin Durant's head. And I think he has a horrible series. Do you agree with that? Or do you think Durant just too good of a scorer?
The thing that Dennis did is very similar to Scottie Pippen. Dennis is a disruptor. There's a difference between just stopping the guy and disrupting the guy. Dennis disrupts. He disrupts rhythm. He disrupts flow. And those are the two things that are the most important with scorers. Scorers get into a rhythm. They get into a flow. And that's what makes them unstoppable. Dennis does such a great job in disrupting that. So Scottie, for example, Scottie would have kept the ball as much as possible away from Kevin Durant. Same thing with Dennis. Dennis would have done everything he could to keep the ball. He would have limited his touches. And when he did get the ball, he would have done everything he could to keep him off balance. Because it's, like I said, it's difficult once he gets the ball, but Dennis being such a great disruptor and getting into his head. And
he can get into his head, right?
Yeah, and needling him. So we got a guy in Kevin Durant who, going up against Dennis Rodman, Tone, he might go 2-3 trips where he doesn't touch the ball.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem.
Well, my whole thing was they were trying to tell me, oh, Warriors 4 or 5. They sweep her. And I go, no, listen. If those two teams meet up, it's going 7. And then flip a coin.
Mm-hmm.
Who gets hot? Because we know Curry can go cold in a game 7. We saw it against the Cavs. He can go cold. And then I also said this, and to your what you just said too. You put Dennis on Kevin Durant and you put Pippen on Curry, picking him up 3/4 court, because you can't let him come up to half court because he'll just shoot from half court.
Yeah.
This is going to be, and then Jordan on Clay. I think I get it, the scoring and the 3-point shooting people look at, but you put those 3 guys on those 3 guys, it's a series. It's a series. I'm not picking either one, but I'm saying it's going 7, and unless you're hot, they're in trouble.
And not to mention, Tone, don't leave this part out. I believe that Dennis Rodman, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen in the 1995-96 season, all 3 of those guys, first team all-league defenders. Why are we talking like Curry would have just torched Scottie Pippen? Why are we talking like Kevin Durant would have just torched Dennis Rodman? We're talking about an elite all-league defender who takes pride in doing that. I'm having a very difficult time with Klay Thompson torching Jordan. Good luck.
That was my point. Is like,
good luck with that.
And those 3 guys could switch. Those guys
right,
pretty much on everything. So, anyways, that's not where we were going with this one. But it reminded me of that conversation. So I'm going to send this out to you guys at Players Choice. See, OG, he knows. I know. Come on. All right, last one. This one's a good one. This one I really like this one because I struggle. Clyde Drexler versus Devin Booker.
Well, we'll start the conversation, Tone, with it's not close in terms of transition. Drex was a much better transition player than Clyde Drexler. Than Devin Booker. I'm sorry. Drex was a much better transition player than Devin Booker, and it's not close. He was a much better athlete than Booker, and it's not close. I think he had a better mid-range game than Devin Booker. I think that's close. I don't think that's a wash. I think that's close. I think he had a better mid-range game. I think that they were similar in their one-on-one game. I think Devin Booker was a little more skilled than Drex. I think Drex was a better finisher than him. Drex was bigger. I think Drex was a better defender than him. I think Drex, in terms of his IQ, because stuff like IQ, Tone, it matters. And the reason why it matters is because it could be the difference in at the end of games, winning games and losing games, going to the stripe and knocking down free throws and things like that. It could be the difference in those things. Drex being the player that he was when he came into the league. I mean, Drex played 3 years of college. So Drex was way more developed as opposed to Devin Booker. He only played 1 year at Kentucky. Not only did he only play 1 year at Kentucky, he didn't start there. He was the best 6th man in the SEC. If I had to pick one of those 2 guys, and if I had to pick one of those 2 guys, I'm going to go with Drex. And it's not a wash, but I do think Drex was better than Booker.
It reminds me of something that I have this forever debate with people. And they say fluent. I gotta get you a chill shirt. Conversation for another day. It's coming. Players today are light years ahead, more athletic and more skilled. And I say timeout. I'm not saying they're not more athletic. I'm not saying that they're not more skilled. I'm saying it's not light years, right? When people say, well, look at the 40 times, there's all these people. We're talking about fractions of a second.
Fractions, Tom.
You're 4.4 to a 4.5. Don't get me wrong. If it's an NFL combine, it makes a difference if you're drafting a player. But when you put that fraction of a second of athleticism onto a court or onto a field, it doesn't necessarily translate into a better player. Mm-hmm. When they say the skill set is better, I say timeout. The skill set is different. Now, there's certain things, they're better three-point shooters. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. They went from averaging, when the first year that the three-point line came out, it was 28% as a league. It's now 35%. But if you look at the 90s, it was 33, 34%, and now it's 35%. So it's a difference of 1%. I get it, the volume is higher. But I would still say the skill set today, but can a player today, are they as good in the post?
No.
Are they as good as mid-range? Right? I get it, it's not part of the game. It's not part of the game. This is always the response. Well, it's not part of the game, so they don't focus on it. Exactly. 3-point wasn't a part of the game, so they didn't focus on it. It's the exact same argument.
Right.
So that's why when people say light years, that's why I always like, whoa, and people are like, you're an old head. I'm like, no, I'm just living in reality that just slow your roll. It's athleticism is better today. I agree. It doesn't mean that it means that you're a better player. And it doesn't mean that it's light years ahead. I always bring this up. So I was arguing with not arguing. I was having a conversation with someone who is, I want to say he's 20, maybe he's 19. And I said, hold on, give me your stats. And he's like, well, I'm 5'11", 170 pounds, and he's a junior. So that's why wasn't sure there. He's a junior in college. Mm-hmm. He runs a 4.49. And he told me his high jumping stuff, right? Whatever. And I said, okay. So so when you say all people have evolved and you're light years ahead, 5'11", which means you're probably 5'10", because everybody, but I go 5'11", 170. That was me as a freshman in high school.
That was me in the 8th grade.
And I ran a 4.46 or 4.47, if I remember correctly. So I was bigger than you, stronger than you, and faster than you. And that was a long 30 years ago. 30 years ago.
35 years ago.
So I get it. I'm just comparing one person to one person, but that's what I'm saying. It's not as clear cut as people would say. Jerry Rice ran a 4.6. Is John Ross? What did John Ross, the Bengals wide receiver, what did he run? A 4.2, a 4.3? Do you remember that? Is he a better wide receiver than Jerry Rice? There was 6 quarterbacks who were viewed as more athletic, more polished than Tom Brady in the NFL draft. Were any of them better than him? Right. JaVale McGee is a super athletic, crazy 7-foot center. Is he the greatest center of all time?
I compare his athleticism to Chamberlain, to be honest with you. I think he's Chamberlain athletic.
Are you ever having a conversation about him?
If you ever try to put JaVale McGee and Chamberlain in the same conversation, these things are coming.
So that's what I'm saying is the athleticism. I'll say the athleticism on average is better. The skill set on average is better. It doesn't make you necessarily. It's not exponentially better, is my point. Right. And it doesn't mean that you're an exponentially better player. It just means, hey, I might be a little bit bigger, stronger, faster. Okay. I can bring you. There's a million. I always bring up Jamarcus Russell. He's bigger, stronger, faster than Tom Brady. He's bigger, stronger, faster than every quarterback in the league. How did it work out? Right. So it doesn't make you a better player. So that being said, when I look at Drexler and Book, I fall in love with Book. And I'm like, man, he can shoot. He can score. He's a killer. He's dropped 70. But when I look at overall game, when I think of athleticism, I think of that Drexler was kind of like that silent assassin. I didn't see him talk too much. He just went out and did his thing. I think in a one-on-one game, I'm going Book. But if I'm picking who's on my team,
Drex.
I'm going Drex.
It's interesting you mentioned that too, Tone, because Jordan said Drex wasn't much of a talker. He said Drex would say something like he hit a couple of shots on Drex, and Drex would say stuff like, you don't like you're gonna miss tonight. Stuff like that.
Yeah, he was a gentleman. He was right. And you know what? That must have drove Jordan crazy, because he wanted any. What do you mean? I'm not going to miss tonight. I'll show you, Mom. I'll miss everything. But like he looks for that stuff. That's why when George Karl didn't say hi to him in the restaurant. You want to say hi to me in the restaurant? I'll
Okay.
show you. That's
Mhm.
crazy. All right. It's now time for mail drop.
It'll drop.
Question number 1. What do you guys think? I'm reading it verbatim. What do you guys think is harder? Making it to the NBA Finals or the Super Bowl? And why?
I'd have to say the Super Bowl, Tone. And the reason why I have to say the Super Bowl is because, number one, there's more guys. And not only are there more guys, I depend on every last one of these guys in order for this thing to go correctly. And in football, not only do I depend on every last one of these guys for things to go correctly, there's one guy who might determine the outcome of the whole game. That could be the kicker, right? That could be that could be the kicker. He can end this thing, completely end it. We need so many things to go our way in football. I believe, and Tone's my football guy, I believe that we have a 53-man active roster. We need every last one of these guys. Now, in basketball, during the playoffs, the roster is short, and we got a 12. I think we got a 15-man roster. You usually play about 10, 11 guys.
Maybe 8 guys. Maybe 8 in the playoffs.
8, 9, 10 guys in the playoffs, tops. All right. So, but the majority of that goes to the star player. So, Bryant, Jordan, James, Lajuan. This is the guy who's going to carry us to that. As opposed to in football, I need guys to block. I need guys to run. I need guys to catch. I need the kicker to do his job. I need the special teams to do their job. I need so many more people to do their job in order for this thing to work. And I need so many things to go the other way for the other team. I think it's much harder winning the Super Bowl than getting to the Super Bowl than getting to the NBA Finals.
Okay. So I struggle with this one, but I think I actually lean the other way to the NBA. And here's why. When you're playing in football, they have a hard cap. And when you look at the start of every season, there's a lot of parity. And there are teams like the Cincinnati Bengals who won 4 games last year. And with one real addition, Jamar Chase, they're able to make it to the Super Bowl. Why? Because of this salary cap, there's parity in the league. And there's always 10 teams that have a legit shot at making it to the Super Bowl. How many games do you have to win to make it to the Super Bowl? 3. In the NBA,
that depends on who you are. That depends on where you are, by the way.
Okay, it might be 4 if you're in the wild card, or it might be 2. Oh, right, yeah. If you get the bye, absolutely, yes, 2. I went the wrong way. You're right. So you have to win 2 to 3 games to make it to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And really, hey, the ball bounces your way, you win a game. Like you can fluke a win if you know. I don't think but I don't know that that's the right term. Whereas in the NBA, although there's a salary cap, it's loose, right? One player makes a huge difference because it's 20% of your starting lineup, and one player can shift the balance of power. And so your team might be good, but you got to beat that team. You had mentioned, we were talking about playoff teams. I don't know if that guy can win 4 times in a week. Well, you got to win the first round. That's 4 games. Second round, 4 game. Conference final 4. You got to win 12 to get to the NBA final. It's a lot harder for me to say I got to win 12 games versus I got to win 2 or 3 games, right? Like you can go on a run and win 2 or 3 games. Can you go on a run and win 12?
Right.
I think it's harder. I think, as to your point, I almost do the reverse. There's 53 guys on the roster. You got to rely on all these other guys. You have 53 guys on the roster. You can rely on these other guys. If someone gets hurt, there's somebody else, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be your offense. Your defense can carry you. Your special teams can carry you, right? I remember my 2006 Chicago Bears. Their offense was but their defense and their special teams with Devin Hester carried them to a Super Bowl. They had no business being in that Super Bowl. Rex Grossman was their quarterback. He's trash. So I look at that and I say, okay, so you could be carried by those. But if you look at the NBA, if LeBron James gets hurt, are Lakers going? No, okay, maybe that's a bad example because this year, even with LeBron James, but like if Kevin Durant is hurt, are the Nets a contender anymore? If Giannis gets hurt, are the Bucks a contender anymore? No. If Chris Paul gets hurt, are the Suns a contender anymore? If Steph Curry, like one player getting hurt and your team's pretty much out.
Right.
Whereas if you look at football, with the exception of maybe the quarterback, but even some quarterbacks, I think of the Bills. Jim Kelly got hurt. I think it's Frank Wright came in. got them their playoff wins.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that team dynamic and because you have to only win 2 or 3 games, that's what, look, it's 49-51. I'm not saying it's way
right. Now
it's
with that,
super close. I'm leaning NBA.
Right. And with that being said, Tone, like you just said, I got to win 4 games, which means that if I lose one, I got another shot. If I lose in the playoffs, I'm out. That's it.
Yeah, it works both ways. It works both ways. Yeah,
if I lose, we're out. I got no shot after that. None whatsoever. Yeah. So
there you go. There's both sides. I hope that answers the question.
Yep.
Number 2. Would Jordan really be great in today's era?
Yes. There's no reason for me to think that he wouldn't be.
How is this a question?
Yeah, there's no evidence to suggest that. What evidence could you present to me to suggest that what Jordan did in the 80s, what Jordan did in the 90s, he would not be able to do that today?
Because he doesn't shoot. The question is always he doesn't shoot threes.
Mm-hmm.
Defenses are so much better because of the zone.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more better players. He had nobody. Right. He didn't go up against any quality guards. I think those are the 3 main ones.
Well, I counter that with number 1. DeMar DeRozan averages 28 a game.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up.
DeMar DeRozan does not shoot the long ball. No, he doesn't. In fact, he lives in the mid-range. That's where he lives. He's lived in the mid-range his entire career. How's he been doing, Tone? I think DeMar DeRozan like 23 a game, something like that.
Let me ask you that. I was gonna almost use that exact same point. I was going to ask you this: who's better, Michael Jordan or DeMar DeRozan?
Jordan.
Who's more athletic?
Jordan.
Who has more of a killer mentality?
Jordan.
Who has a better skill set, offensively and defensively? So how the heck can DeMar DeRozan be in an MVP conversation when there's a guy who's literally better at every single thing and he wouldn't be successful? It blows my mind.
Everything. Not some things, but most things.
Everything.
Everything. Better than me at nothing.
Could you imagine, as much as people say, oh, Jordan didn't have to do it in the social media era, could you imagine what Michael Jordan would be on the court if he had a bad tweet about him?
Tone, you and me had this conversation. How do you think he became the defensive player of the year? You can't play defense, Jordan. That's the problem. Oh, you don't think I can play defense? We're going to get to the bottom of that right now. Okay. Well, Mike, you can't lead the league in scoring and win an NBA championship. Oh, you don't think so? Okay, we'll get to the bottom of that. So I can only imagine having to listen to the nonsense that he would have to listen to in today's social media climate and be successful. Give me a break. I think Jordan would be just fine. There's no evidence to suggest that he wouldn't be awesome today. None.
Thank you. All right. This one's interesting. What are your thoughts on Amari Cooper possibly being released?
Well, from what I understand, Tone, it's going to save the Cowboys $16 million in cap space, and I think that they're good with what they have in terms of wideouts and in terms of offense. You've already heard my logic, Tone, on the Cowboys, and I think they should be running the ball through Ezekiel Elliott. He should be carrying the ball 20, 25 times a game anyway. That's number 1. Number 2, I don't think they use Amari Cooper nearly as much as they should. I think Amari Cooper I don't think he's above average. I think he's better than above average. I think he's a good wide receiver.
He was their number 1 wide receiver?
Yeah, I think he's way better than above average. But with that being said, with them moving toward coming off of him, I think that they're going to go a different way offensively. And I think that that's going to help them. It's going to shore up more for them offensively. It can help them with their offensive line. Maybe get a better backup running back, even though I like Pollard, but maybe get a better backup running back. Or maybe even get somebody to supplant Ezekiel Elliott. But from a business standpoint, it does make sense because that money opens up a lot more options for them.
Yeah, I think with the Cowboys, we know that they need to improve their play calling. Mm-hmm. However, I also look at I'm looking at their where they are in terms of the salary cap, and they needed to make a decision: Amari Cooper or Schultz, their tight end. And they looked at that and said, "Look, we got to keep a running game. We need a tight end." When you look at their offense, it looked better when they had a tight end set, when they had a 21 package with 2 wide receivers, 1 back. And so I think, and 2 tight end sets, I think that helps the running game. I think it helps their offense. I think it helps Dak. I think it helps everyone. So they're like, hey, we got to make that decision. Can Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb be enough at wide receiver? I think they're both very capable.
I think we could
be 1-2 wide receivers. So they made the right business and on the field, I think, decision if they do end up releasing him, which I think it's all but done, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's gone. My next thing is, I actually like it for the Cowboys. I also like it for who could sign him.
Right.
I'd really like to see him go back to the Raiders. They need a number one wide receiver. Wouldn't that be just a nice pairing?
I like him in Baltimore too.
Yeah, you want every wide receiver. Baltimore would have 50 receiver. Every receiver that's free.
No,
I like him in Baltimore.
No, what I want to see is I want to see Lamar Jackson
Have a wide receiver.
Yeah, and I want him to have a really good wide receiver, and I want to see him successful. So, absolutely, I would love to see him in Baltimore, no doubt.
Final question. It's my favorite one.
Uh-oh.
Let's see. Test your football knowledge. I've heard Fluent, that's me, on lives refer to the Steagles. Who are the Steagles?
I don't know who the Steagles are, Tom.
I love it. All right, let me get Fluent on it for a minute.
Would that be the Steelers and the Eagles?
So during World War II, football's been around a lot longer than the Super Bowl era. During World War II, a lot of the NFL players went off into the military to serve their country. Mm-hmm. Thank you for your service, as you absolutely should. We all appreciate what you did. There wasn't enough players. So the two teams in Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles, for the 1943 season, because they didn't have enough players, combined for one season to become the Steagles.
How about that?
Why the heck they called themselves the Steagles? Listen, I get it. It's the Steelers and Eagles combined. I really would have preferred, I don't know, the Pennsylvania Pioneers, like anything other than the Steagles. But that's who the Steagles are. And they weren't the only team. There was a couple other teams, but they were the one for the full season. They weren't horrible, by the way, either. So in 1943, Steelers and Eagles didn't have enough players because a lot of guys went off to the war. And that's who the Steagles are.
Learn something new every day.
So there you go. Now you know about the Steagles. You know about the Kings and the Lakers conspiracy of 2002. I like the NBA verses. I think we should do that some more. On Friday's episode, we're going to do our first of a 3-part series. We are going to, because we love drafting that all-star team, we're going to draft using the top 75. We're each going to get a starting 5 and a 6th man, but we're only going to be able to use in episode 1, 51 through 75. Maybe I'll throw in a wild card if there's a player you think should have been in the 75 and shouldn't. I don't know about that. 50 through 74 will be the week after. And then week number 3, part 3, players 1 through 25. We're going to draft a team. I already know our first picks are going to be Jordan, LeBron, but we'll see. Maybe he goes off in a different right. We'll see. All right. So that's it for this week. Don't forget to check us out. The podcast is available now. I'm just going to say everywhere you find podcasts, you can find Fluent and Chill. All the YouTube stuff that you're seeing here, obviously you're seeing it on Chilltown Hoops. So if you haven't already, subscribe, smash the like button, make your comments. And then you can find we're coming up with prizes, contests, giveaways. All of those things will be found at Fluent_Chill on Instagram and Twitter. Until next week or next episode.
Take it light, but take it.